network analysis of a poet. In Urdu tradition, we have Ghalib, and his poetry also involves Persian poetry and as well as Urdu poetry. So our idea was to use digital analysis to see whether we can categorize his themes or not. So in Urdu tradition, it is said that a theme of a poetry cannot be recognized very well. The reason is very simple, and it is also mentioned in our presentation that a ghazal, the form we use for poetry in Urdu generally, in the 19th century, and even before that, did not have really a kind of a structure in terms of themes. So in a ghazal, every verse can be different from another verse. So that was the basic idea of ghazal. So we were trying to see what thoughts Ghalib had in mind when he was really constructing his poetry. Because in the usual, in the sense of poem, the way we use now, which in Urdu is called nazm, is completely organized. In fact, the nazm, the term also means organization. So it is very well organized, so we can know the facts, we can know the themes in those nazm. But in ghazals, it's very difficult to find. So that was our idea. And we read another paper. The people have worked on ghazals, and they basically, through their analysis, through their modeling, they found out that there is an interpretive unity at the level of ghazal. And that was a little different from our view. Interpretive unity basically means that even in ghazal, which is thought to be a very disorganized poetry, disorganized in terms of themes, also had interpretive unity at the level of, they can be interpreted in the using the same theme. So for this, we use first so we had to basically crawl through the Diwan of Ghalib, for which we use a source that was Desertful of Roses. It's hosted at the Columbia University, and it was maintained by Frances Pritchett over there, and she's a scholar there. And so basically, we crawled the entire site, and then in that side, they have also mentioned certain verses that are related to that verses we are looking at. So for example, if you take a verse A, you can find in that side that we have another verse that might be related to that. And that was completely manual. So you cannot have, you cannot really visualize it at the, at the divan level, or at the, so you cannot really see what is happening. You cannot see the big picture. You cannot see everything from a vantage point. So we started, the tools we use, let me go through them. So we use Python to crawl through the verses, and then we use R and Python and Tulip to visualize it. So the results we found were the first thing. It was very surprising because we were thinking that there will be certain clusters because not everything can be related to something else. So, but what happened according to that construction, when we tried looking at it from a bird eye view, as you can see in this network construction part, you can see that our graph is very much congested and highly clustered. So there are no disjoint clusters here, and it's highly clustered graph. So, and it also implied that it also implied that there is some form of interpretive unity at the ghazal. There is no interpretive unity at a ghazal level, because if it were the case, we would have certain disjoint clusters here. Because, for example, if something is about, say, nationalism, then that verse should be different from that graph. That cluster should be different from something that is only about, say, love or some another theme. And that really created problems for us, because then we had to think about a way to categorize themes. For this, we look at this particular portion. So we tried to see. We thought that we can use triangles or triads in our graph to think about puzzles, because what happens in a graph is that even if we have a complete graph of say 4 nodes or 5 nodes, we can find multiple triads in them. So triad can be thought of as an atomic way to categorize themes. And we used our measure. We called it transitiveness. So it was simply the number of triangles node U is in, where every node corresponds to a particular verse, and then we divide by the total number of triangles in our entire graph. So the other measure was very cliched in a way, that it was degree. We tried saying uh, uh, if a verse has a huge degree, or if a verse, whatever degree it has, then that verse can be looked at as a theme. So so in this way, we are not here trying to really say, we are not trying to say that this theme corresponds to this thing, or this theme corresponds to this particular category. We are here trying to say that this can be a way to simply categorize themes. So we have not explicitly found out what themes are, but we have a way to address this question. Second, before going to this, I want to talk about homophily and degree assortavity. So the concept of homophily is that if some, in this context, if some verse is very popular, it's very logical to think about it, some verse is very popular, then it should be connected to other popular verses, because it is popular in that way. But because it was what we hypothesized initially, but because our graph is very, very congested and highly clustered, we found a really interesting thing in terms of this concept. We found that even if we have an unpopular verse, it is connected to a very popular verse. So this really, if you think about it, this takes us to another thought, and that thought is that even if when we use metaphors, so and a metaphor may have multiple meanings, and if it is using in a particular context, it has a different meaning, and for another context, it has a different meaning. And so we found out that there is so much metaphorization in the puzzle, and that really substantiated our idea that uh, that in Urdu tradition we have this concept of sabke Hindi, which in English can be translated as this style of Hindi. And that style here basically meant that you can use a term in multiple ways for multiple contexts. In Urdu, you have, for example, a common theme is uh, wine, the concept of wine of love, and that can be used in multiple contexts. You can use it for, say, love. You can use it for many other things. So in that way, even if the word literally meant something else, in this entire, in the construction of a ghazal, in the context of a ghazal, it was something else. So that was a really good result that we found. Second, we found that we then thought about what would be, how Ghalib was alive today, how would his entire ghazal and diwan evolve. So we were now talking about the question of evolution for a poet, that what themes would he consider if he was alive today. And uh, we found out that there are certain verses that was following this 80-20% rule that we usually found in economies, that there are like 20% rich people and 80% are not. So that is called a power law. And through power law, we found out that there are certain verses that has high degree distribution. and they are, and by high degree distribution means that they are connected to more verses or more nodes in the graph theoretic context. And then these verses, if he was alive today, these verses would be more evolving. So if you even want to psychoanalyze Ghalib or analyze Ghalib more, then you really need to focus on these verses because he was using these concepts more than the others. Now, I would like to say, which one Hobson coming?
Well, welcome, Wahid. Actually, we're going to need to have you guys wrap up. So if you want to say one final statement, that's fine, and then we can switch into questions.
Okay, all right. I think Afan pretty much explained everything. I don't know because I joined in later. How about we take questions before, so that if the audience has something to ask, then we can clarify on those.